Hello everyone and welcome. My name is Reiko Miyamoto from Sapporo, Japan. Today I will report on the status of end-of-life care for patients with dementia in Japan and consider both the background and future of such care. Sapporo is in the north of Japan and hosted the 1972 Winter Olympics. The Snow Festival and Sapporo beer are famous. In 2007, I visited a dementia care facility in Sweden. Dr. Takman said, 20 years ago, when elderly were unable to receive nutrition orally, we used intravenous drip or tube feeding. But now we don't provide such treatments. The patient partakes only as much as they can eat and drink. My father died that way, and he died peacefully, at the same time as being surprised that elderly were dying naturally. I thought how nice it would be if the elderly could die like that. On the other hand, it is common practice in Japan that when a patient is unable to receive nutrition orally, nutrition is delivered by a gastrostomy tube or nasogastric tube or intravenously, even in the terminal stages of dementia. This patient is receiving gastrostomy nutrition. The joints of the limbs remain bent and do not extend. Sputum aspiration and tracheostomy tube replacement typically cause intolerable suffering for the patient. After learning about end-of-life care for the elderly in Sweden, I began to think about what would be the ideal end-of-life care for the elderly. I believe that providing ideal end-of-life care for the elderly is a global challenge. Today, we are attending a conference on euthanasia, i.e., medical assisted dying, but all people around the world need a peaceful death, euthanasia or no euthanasia. I would like to express the difference in meaning between dying with dignity in Japan and euthanasia. Dying with dignity in Japan doesn't mean euthanasia. It means withholding life-prolonging measures based on a living will and dying naturally with sufficient palliative care. Due to current Japanese laws, euthanasia is illegal and therefore not an option for individuals. What I'm going to talk about today is 1. Status of end-of-life care for patients with dementia in Japan. 2. The reason for life extension. 3. Our efforts to help elderly die peacefully. 4. Future care. Status of end-of-life care for patients with dementia in Japan. First of all, I would like to provide information on Japan's aging population. The life expectancy as of this year is 82 years for men and 88 years for women, the longest in the world. The aging rate, the percentage of the population aged 65 and over, compared to the overall population in 2022, 28.9%. highest in the world. Due to the long life expectancy and high aging rate, the number of people with dementia is increasing rapidly in Japan. 1 in 6 people over the age of 65 has dementia. I would like to briefly examine the progression of dementia. The vertical line shown here represents cognitive function, while the horizontal line represents the duration of the advancement of dementia. The progressive backward decline, a reversing of what would be typical of a child's developmental phase, ultimately leading to death. In the terminal stages of dementia, patients become bedridden, are unable to speak, swallow food, and ultimately die. However, many people do not know that dementia is a deadly disease. Meal assistance, gastrostomy nutrition, intravenous drips are performed, while hemodialysis and mechanical ventilation may also be performed. These are too much care. For such treatment, in cases where a patient consistently attempts to remove their IV root, their limbs are bound and restrained. This creates too much suffering for the patient. I would like to show the results of an end-of-life care attitude survey sponsored by the Japanese national government, taken in 2018. People were asked, if you were to develop dementia, require help with daily living, and not be able to manage oral intake, would you wish to receive artificial nutrition? Just under 10% of respondents said they wanted to receive gastrostomy tube feeding, nasogastric tube feeding, or intravenous hyperalimentation. 60 to 70% of respondents said they didn't want to receive such treatment, while the remaining 20% of respondents said they were not sure whether they wanted basic care or not. As these results show, in the terminal stage of dementia, most people do not want artificial nutrition for themselves. Who decides what care a demented patient will receive in Japan today? Patients with advanced dementia have impaired judgment, and subsequently family members and doctors decide on their medical care. Currently, there are 4 reasons why some people and doctors are hesitant to withhold life-prolonging measures in Japan. Patients, doctors, families, and medical status. With regard to patients, in Japan, this is considered ominous and we try to avoid the topic. Additionally, not asserting oneself is considered virtuous in Japan, so people don't assert themselves. Finally, due to the culture of Japan being family-based rather than individualistic, people tend to leave things up to their family to decide. Gleaned from the same survey, additional results showed that when people were asked whether they thought the idea of a living will was a good idea, 66% of respondents that they agree with the concept of a living will, yet only 5% of respondents have actually created a living will. With regard to doctors, they are unwilling to listen to the patient's wishes because the family's wishes are more important than the patient's wishes. They have received a medical education that emphasizes life extension. They fear being sued by a patient's family for not prolonging their loved one's life. With regard to family members, in most cases, they don't know their loved one's wishes for end-of-life care, and they don't want to make the decision to end their loved one's life. Some people are life-prolonging proponents. Some people live on the patient's pension. Now, I would like to provide some relevant information about the medical status in Japan. In 2018, the number of the available hospital beds per 1,000 people was 13, the highest in the world, ensuring that most elderly who desire it may receive care in hospital. Japan has a universal health insurance system, and the public receive medical care at a low cost. Presently, there are no laws in Japan explicitly outlawing or supporting a medical practitioner to adhere or refuse a living will. In 2019, the location of deaths in Japan was 74% of people died in hospital, 40% died in their own homes, while 12% died in a nursing home. Private nursing homes began to open in Japan in the 2000s. These facilities are presently the prominent institutions in which a patient may die with dignity. I would like to explain about our efforts for ideal end-of-life care. I am the director of the Hokkaido branch of the Japan Society for Dying with Dignity, founded in 1976, whose current national membership is approximately 100,000 people. Our society has promoted the concept of dying with dignity by issuing living wills and seeking and supporting the right of a person to live comfortably and to die peacefully. Additionally, since its inception, our society has continuously campaigned with some politicians to legislate the integration of dying with dignity into Japanese laws. This is a living will issued by the Japan Society for Dying with Dignity. Personally, I have visited various countries in search of the ideal end-of-life care for the elderly. I have visited Sweden, Australia, Austria, Poland, Spain, and the United States. In those countries, it was rare for elderly patients in terminal stages to have their lives prolonged with artificial nutrition. Also, I have written 2 books and several articles featured in newspapers, all in an effort to spread the information to the Japanese public. One of my 2 books has also been translated and published in Taiwan and China. Both countries may have the same problem as Japan. Although still rare in Japan, in my case, I haven't prolonged the patient's life unless the patient and their family requested that I do so. The patient has a peaceful end. As a result of our efforts, we have seen some small but significant growth in the interest of the general public with respect to end-of-life care and dying with dignity. I would like to show the ideal end-of-life care for the elderly, including those with dementia. First of all, self-determination is important. People should take responsibility for themselves and not leave it up to their family. Secondly, doctors, family members, and the government should consider what is in the patient's best interests. We need to provide a peaceful end for all elderly around the world. They are my patients. In closing them, I would like to thank you for your time and consideration today.